Vandana Shiva, welcome to Barcelona. It's a pleasure to introduce you. Bona tarda a tothom, també a les persones que estan seguint la retransmissió en directe des de l'auditori del CCCB. Està clar que la Vandana Shiva suscita un gran interès. La seva trajectòria i les seves idees, controvertides sens dubte, fan possible l'èxit d'aquesta convocatòria. Una conferència organitzada pel CCCB amb la col·laboració de l'editorial Captain Swing i l'Hotel Alma i també amb el suport comunicatiu d'Icari Editorial amb la incansable Anna Monjo al capdavant. L'entrada de la conferència serveix per accedir gratuïtament a l'exposició després de la Fi del Món, que resta oberta fins al dia 29 d'abril. El hashtag, per si s'animen a tuitejar, el tenen a la pantalla, en tot cas és clima-CCCB. I per acabar la informació prèvia, Vandana Shiva signarà llibres al finalitzar la conferència. La condició indispensable és que portin el llibre a les mans i que es pot adquirir al fons del hall a la llibreria Laie. Bé, jo ara els faré un breu perfil, molt breu, de 5 minuts sobre la Vandana Shiva, després ella farà la seva intervenció i després obrirem un torn de preguntes. Bé, començo amb aquest perfil. La veu i la trajectòria de Vandana Shiva es sustenta en un trípode que formen 3 paraules. 3 paraules que són dones, llavors i aigua. A partir d'aquests 3 mots, ha construït un discurs en defensa del medi ambient que té una gran influència avui arreu del món. És un discurs controvertit, valent, molt crític i sense cap concessió als poderosos i el que s'anomena capitalisme extractiu. Les idees de Vandana Shiva teixeixen un estret lligam entre les crisis ambientals i les crisis socials que avui patim, també a les portes d'Europa. Vandana Shiva va néixer el 5 de novembre de 1952 a Dehradun, a la Índia. Ara em deia que molt a prop de l'Himàlaia, de fet l'anomenen la regió de les muntanyes. Situada al nord de Nova Delhi, com els deia, és propera a l'Himàlaia i reconeguda per l'excel·lent arròs basmati que s'hi conreua. El millor arròs basmati del món, afirma, m'ha dit la Vandana. Vandana Shiva és filla d'un conservador forestal i d'una grangera. Va estudiar física i es va doctorar a la Universitat de Western Ontario, al Canadà. Tothom li augurava una brillant carrera com a investigadora en física quàntica, però potser preguntes més terrenals sobre el món de la seva infantesa i les tradicions familiars que es perdien en la nit dels temps van poder més. Els paisatges de la seva infantesa, amagatzemats a la seva memòria, s'estaven desintegrant. Veia frustració entre la seva gent i com es malbarataven els recursos comuns a causa d'una lògica econòmica que impedia l'organització democràtica dels camperols i agricultors del seu país. I vet aquí que l'atzar va intervenir. Les llavors, l'aigua i les dones van trucar a la seva porta. El govern indi li va demanar que participés com a experta per investigar les causes de l'escassetat d'aigua en regions on no feia gaire abundava aquest recurs. Des de l'Institut Indi de Ciència i l'Institut de Gestió de Bangalore va investigar les relacions entre política científica, tecnològica i ambiental. L'any 1982 va crear la Fundació per a la Recerca en Ciència, Tecnologia i Ecologia, un laboratori d'idees que ha nodrit els moviments ambientals, especialment del sud. Unes paraules seves crec que sintetitzen molt bé els principis que inspiren la seva tasca. Les societats no viuen només del comerç, sinó fonamentalment de principis coherents, sistemes organitzats i visions globals. Des de 1982, assumint els principis de la no violència de Gandhi, ha fet un camí llarg, no el detallaré perquè estaria molta estona, Ha fet ciència, ha inspirat moviments socials, ha escrit una vintena de llibres, el darrer, Quin alimenta realmente el mundo, que avui es presenta. També volta per tots els racons del planeta, avui menys que fa un temps, i avui es troba a Barcelona, i volta per els racons del planeta argumentant aquesta que és la seva visió del món. Alguns afirmen que és una mena d'estrella del rock que batalla contra les llavors modificades genèticament. Altres diuen que és la mare Teresa del medi ambient. En qualsevol cas, la seva mirada intenta donar una alternativa controvertida i sovint titllada d'utòpica per resoldre problemes globals i locals alhora, i tan transcendents com la fam i les desigualtats. Vaig acabant. Allò indubtable és que les seves idees i el seu activisme, sempre a partir d'aquest trípode dones, llavors i gestió comuna de l'aigua, és font d'inspiració i acció de nombrosos moviments socials als països del sud, la majoria d'aquests moviments liderats per dones. Moviments que reclamen, entre altres coses, una vida digna per tot ésser humà i també, que no és poc, que la llavor de la llibertat pugui ser plantada a qualsevol camp i territori del planeta. Moltes gràcies. Vandana Shiva.
Thank you very much, Louis. Thank you to the CCCB. CCCB. That's why it was going wrong. I tried to say why I'm late. And the email wouldn't go through. Apologies. It's a joy to be part of this cycle of discussion. In India, we always talk about the end of cycles because we don't believe in linear time. There isn't linear time. It's a total construct. We believe in cyclical time. And Kal is time, and Kali is the divinity of time. She can also be terribly ferocious when negative aspects start to overrule the world. So what we are witnessing today in terms of the devastation of climate havoc, I don't call it climate change, because climate change makes you think it is about a very predictable increase in temperature. And then you've had people like Bjorn Lomborg, who in Copenhagen organized the Copenhagen Consensus and said, oh, that's fine, because we'll be able to swim in winter. And the British skeptics said, oh, we'll be able to grow more wine. No, climate havoc and climate chaos means the rupture of the Earth's amazing systems of creating the climate that has allowed us as human beings to be around for 20,000 years. And for us to do the kind of agriculture, to live the kind of societies that we've had. On Indian data, we've been farming for 10,000 years in the Ganges Basin. And the water comes up from my region in the Himalaya, 10,000 years. I call climate change the metabolic disease of the planet, just like you get diabetes and you get other problems, when the systems of self-regulation start to get ruptured. Now, it was James Lovelock, the NASA scientist, who was absolutely surprised to see that the Earth creates her own temperature, that she manages the climate. And that's why he said the Earth is a living entity and gave her the name Gaia, the name of the Greek goddess for the Earth. those systems of self-regulation are being ruptured because in our arrogance, but in our stupidity, we have taken what the earth put underground, old fossilized plant material, over 600 million years. And I think the fact she put it underground was leave it there. It isn't that, people didn't use little bits of fossil fuels in Burma. There was little oil mills. Even the Native Americans used to have tiny bits for lighting. And all of the oil industry is based on communities using little bits, largely for lighting. Then you got the giant called Standard Oil. And not only did they start to extract what the earth had left underground, but they started to extract it around the world. So if we see a mess today in the Middle East, it's really a carbon mess. The boundaries of every country there were created for wars to control the oil that was underground. It isn't for no reason that we call it fossil fuels. It's fossilized. But every year today in the industrial system, we are burning more than 20 million years of nature's work. Now, within her systems, she put that carbon underground. The living carbon could recycle itself. And these are simple things we learned in school about the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, the water cycle. It seems the smarter you get, the more you forget. Especially now that everything's about smartphones. You don't just forget, you stop knowing anymore. All of that burning beyond the Earth's capacity to absorb, while simultaneously destroying the systems that absorb the carbon, the forests, living soils, is what has built up all of that pollution that is leading to the metabolic disease, which is called climate change. We keep hearing about how, if things aren't changed, we're going to have as much as 6 degrees rise in temperature. And these are not just figures from climate models. They're extremes that we're experiencing today. Just in the last 20 years, 1999, we had a climate extreme, a super cyclone, which was 3 times the velocity of all historic cyclones in the Bay of Bengal, hit the coast of Orissa. 30,000 people died. 30,000 people died. In 2013, in my beautiful region in the Himalaya, where the sources of the rivers are all sacred sites. And these sacred sites are part of a very important pilgrimage called the Char Dhams, which are the tributaries of the Ganges. One of these tributaries is a river called the Mandakini. It begins in a glacier called Chorabari, and there's a shrine called Kedarnath. On 16th of June, which is the first day of the monsoon, you got so much rain that the glacial lake that had formed because of warming burst, carried all of Kedarnath with it, except the temple. The temple didn't get destroyed. And because they were building so many dams, they want to build 500 dams on the tributaries of the Ganges in my area, 500 dams. So of course they're blasting, they're making tunnels, and all of this debris got carried with these floods. The river bed rose 40 meters, carrying with it villages, bridges. Children whose school was across the river, a 5-minute walk, were now walking 8 hours a day to get to school. And one of the first things we had to do was actually put a little trolley so they could start going across. 20,000 people died in that flood. Just 2 days. Many of them were pilgrims who'd come to these sacred shrines. You might have also heard about the Indus floods, where largely in Pakistan, 10,000 people died, but 200 died in what is supposed to be the desert of Ladakh. It's a high-altitude desert. Doesn't get rain. Gets snow. But it was 2010. They got rain, 200 people got washed away, and the entire Leh Valley was devastated. We're working in many of those villages, saving seeds. But droughts don't have the same TV value as a flood. They're very quiet, but they cause devastation too. And the same processes that make our soils fragile, that make our water disappear, are processes that contribute to climate change and aggravate the crisis people are anyway feeling. Most people don't know that the beginning of the Syrian crisis is a 2009 drought, intense climate extreme. Before that, they'd been practicing the kind of agriculture that had depleted the water, desertified the soils. And in 2009, 1 million peasants were forced off the land. 1 million. Can you imagine? I mean, you all traumatize about all the tourists who descend on your city. But can you imagine if all of Spain came to your town? Countries like mine, like Syria, actually even Spain, have had what is a favorite term of the IMF and World Bank and all the big financial institutions, a term called austerity. And austerity meant Assad could not help the farmers. He could not give them money to survive. And then the warmongers were waiting, and before you know it, you have a war. So Syria today is known for having a war, an unending war. We don't even know a war between whom and whom. And also the refugees that have been a result. Even in Africa, one of the largest lakes, one of the largest water bodies of Africa is Lake Chad, 22,000 square kilometer lake. Over about 15 years, this lake has been drained of its water for commodity-producing industrial farming. 80% of the water doesn't go into the lake anymore. And when that same 2009 severe drought with climate change hit, with the depleting water, there were huge conflicts between the pastoralists, the farmers, and the fishermen. This is the beginning of Boko Haram. Now, years ago in 1984, the area of India which has 5 rivers, that's why it's called Punjab. Ab is water, Panj is 5. This is the land where in the 60s the chemical farming was introduced in the name of the Green Revolution. It wasn't green, it wasn't very revolutionary. And it was forced on us. I've written a whole book on this, The Violence of the Green Revolution. But Punjab, a very prosperous agricultural state. I did my MSc honors in particle physics from Punjab, and there were no problems. In 1973, I graduated. But by the late 70s, you were having unrest. You were having discontent. And the army was sent into the Golden Temple. A whole series of vicious cycles of violence took place. I was working for the United Nations University that time, and I said, there's something strange going on. Must look at this. Same year, a chemical plant had leaked in the city of Bhopal, killed 7,000 people there. And when I researched the Green Revolution, I realized a number of things. The first, that very often, what are conflicts arising from an ecological crisis created by the extractive system, taking resources out of society and ecosystems, that instead of addressing the non-sustainability of the phenomena, a diversion and distraction is created to make those conflicts look like they are religious conflicts or ethnic conflicts. I saw this happen with Punjab. This is exactly what happened with Nigeria and Lake Chad. If we'd addressed it in terms of destroying the water, destroying the land, and creating climate change, we'd have a solution. Instead, all we do is send more military. I train once a year the National Defense Academy, which is the top academy, which gets people from around the world, generals and brigadiers come. And after one of my talks, a brigadier from Nigeria put up his hand and said, "You're so right about this. 9 million people's livelihoods were devastated. And you're also right that the solution is ecological, not military. Because all that the military solution will do is aggravate the violence." Now, we are seeing the refugees come through the Mediterranean. They're sinking, they're dying. And a few years ago, I was on a security discussion somewhere in Europe. And of course, the security experts are all, senior. They're all men. And they all kept talking about militarizing the Mediterranean. And all I kept talking was about making peace with the earth. Over these years, as the climate havoc increases, I've been looking a lot at the connections between industrial farming and climate instability. And because these issues of agriculture were not really being discussed in the UN Convention on Climate Change, I wrote a book before the Copenhagen negotiations called Soil Not Oil. I don't think it's been published in Spanish. And basically, on the one hand, it was identifying the sources of the greenhouse gases from industrial farming that are leading to the havoc, as well as the solutions. When we think of industrial farming, we think of the chemicals in the farming. But every chemical industrial farming comes from fossil fuels. So industrial farming is a fossil fuel agriculture. Of course, the mechanization is a big part of it. But synthetic nitrogen fertilizers come from fossil fuels. And again, the arrogance and stupidity that when in Hitler's Germany, they figured out that you could, at very high temperatures, burn fossil fuels and fix atmospheric nitrogen. It's the first time they realized you could get nitrogen fertilizers out of the same process that made the explosives. So just remember in your mind how many of the bombs in terrorism in recent times have been fertilizer bombs. Oslo, Oklahoma, all of Afghanistan, because the Americans gave so much fertilizer to bribe the Taliban away from the Soviets that every village and every hut is full of fertilizer sacks. And they just retool it back to the original purpose of making an explosive. And the slogan at that time in Germany was, "We'll make bread from air." Of course, nitrogen fertilizers did not improve nitrogen fertility. They destroyed nitrogen fertility. But they also created a greenhouse gas which is 300 times more deadly than carbon dioxide in disturbing the metabolism of the earth. And this is nitrous oxide. And then the kind of food system that has been evolved based on fossil fuel is not just in the production, but in the distribution too. In the distribution, we have what I call food miles, where everything is moving long distance. And local is getting more and more difficult to find. And the more it moves long distance, the more fossil fuel is used, but the more unfood food becomes, anti-food. I mean, tomatoes that don't cook because they're meant for sitting in a container. And apples and peaches and plums that taste exactly the same because food has been reduced to mass. And the measure of food is now how much does it yield, not how nutritionally empty it is, not how full of toxics it is, not how useless it is in terms of nourishing us. So today everyone's waking up to the fact that 75% of the human chronic diseases are related to what we are eating. Just as much as 75% of the Earth's health problems are related to how we grow food. 40 to 50% of all greenhouse gases are from industrial, agriculture, and globalized food systems. 75% of all the soil destruction and desertification. More than 75% of the water. Because it's a system that has to use a lot of water to dissolve the chemicals, as simple as that. And it's not nourishing the soil and its water holding capacity. If you just have 0.5% organic matter in soil, you can hold 80,000 liters of water in the soil. That's the difference between having a crop and not having a crop. That's the difference between dealing with drought and not dealing with drought. That's the difference between desertification and fertile soils. We have a very, very beautiful ancient Vedic saying that in this handful of soil lies your future. Take care of it, it will take care of you and provide you with everything you need, the food, the fuel, the fiber. Destroy it, and it will destroy you. So while with the climate issue, we normally look at the parts per million in the atmosphere, the issue is that all of that emissions begins underground, extraction, then in the way we use it on the land, emissions go up, and emissions don't get absorbed. So unless we connect the issue of soil to climate change, A, we will not find the real causes, and 2, we will not find the real solutions. Even pesticides come from fossil fuels. Even pesticides come from fossil fuels. Of course, those who've given us the kind of agriculture that is such a big component of the climate disaster are not going to give up their profits in a hurry. It's important to remember, in my new book, Who Really Feeds the World, covers a lot of this. We've grown food for 10,000 years. Everything is food. Even before humans came on the planet, there was food. Wasn't produced through agriculture, but it was produced. Every being needs food. And in my understanding, the web of life is a food web. It's food that moves around, nutrition that moves around. And when that nutrition becomes toxic, then toxics move around. And that's why the spread of disease. It's during the wars that the companies were given the task of using chemicals to kill. Both the gases like Xylon B, which were used for the concentration camps, as well as poison gases that were used in the war. Every one of these gases had only one purpose: how to kill humans. The war's ended. Decent business would have said, the war is ended, let's fold up these factories. But were they going to fold up the factories? No. They totally rewrote our understanding of how we grow food and made it look like without chemicals, agriculture is impossible. But in the process, they created what I have called a century of ecocide and genocide. Ecocide are crimes against nature, genocide are crimes against humanity. In terms of crimes against nature, look at the fact that 75% of the bees have disappeared because of the neonicotinoids of Bayer. Soil organisms. Diversity. 93% of the cultivated diversity of the world has been driven out by monocultures that go hand in hand with chemical farming. I was reading a report that 75% of the insects of Europe have disappeared in the last few years. All insects. And most of these insects play a very important role in the web of life. But every advertisement of the toxic industry is as if everything alive is dangerous. I mean, just go see the ads of pesticides. And you've got to exterminate them. The destruction of the earth is also, because even though they talk about being more efficient, in fact, they have to spread out more. They have to colonize the Amazon, they've got to colonize Argentina, they've got to colonize the rainforests of Indonesia. Land that was never under cultivation has to be colonized. Very inefficient system. Uses 10 units of input to produce 1 unit of food. The rest is creating climate change. That's all contributing to entropy. The inefficiency of the system has been hidden by making it look like efficiency and productivity are only about how many people do the work. So the only input counted is humans. And by definition, the more farmers you can destroy, the more efficient your system. Even though it's giving you poison in your food, even though it's giving you nutritionally empty food, and even though now it's giving you 4 commodities: genetically modified corn, genetically modified soya, genetically modified canola, and genetically modified cotton. 90%, it's all about feeding the world, but 90% of the corn and soya grown in the world today is going for biofuel as a so-called solution to climate change, a green fuel, and animal feed. The third big greenhouse gas, besides the pollution from the nitrogen and the carbon dioxide, is methane. And the big sources of methane are first and foremost factory farms. You just go by and they stink. They're called CAFOs in America. I said, what's a CAFO? Concentrated animal farm operation. Factory prisons for animals, really, nothing less. But the second, lesser known aspect is the fact that when you think in terms of militarized mind, and you think in terms of monoculture, then not only is everything alive dangerous and must be exterminated, everything diverse has to be exterminated. So there's a war by industrial agriculture, and now, in the cultural spheres too, a war against diversity. Uniformity has been defined as safety. But tell me, when was a tomato that was slightly smaller dangerous for your health? the European Union safety standards are mechanical standards. They have a little thing. If the tomato goes through, it's too small, rejected, goes to waste. Too big, goes to waste. About 75% of good, healthy, nourishing food is being wasted because of uniformity, called sanitary phytosanitary measures. All this is leading to the waste that is leading to methane. And they keep talking about reducing food waste rather than stopping these globalized chains. They constantly want to knock out the next small farmer, making it look like the small farmer generates waste. On a small farm, there is no waste for the simple reason everything is in cycles. Your carbon is in cycle of making compost. Your nitrogen is in cycle because you have nitrogen-fixing crops, the beans, that are naturally fixing nitrogen from you, not by blasting fossil fuels at 500 degrees. The water is conserved. And at least on our farm, the parts of the food we don't eat, the cow eats it. We've had complementary diets, which is why cows and bovine were called herbivores. Herbivores means they like herbs. They don't want soya bean. They definitely don't want a mad cow diet, which for a while they were trying to get that passed. Now, in these 20 years, when we knew the evidence was there, that's why the United Nations Framework Convention was created. Sadly, in Copenhagen, President Obama came in and sat with the 5 big new polluting countries, China, India, other countries which have received the outsourcing of manufacture and therefore are polluting, and said, let's not have a treaty. Let's have voluntary commitments. Obama killed the UN treaty. Trump has walked out of the voluntary commitment. That was basically the Paris meeting. The Paris meeting was not a legally binding emissions reduction system. It was how much are you offering to reduce? And there's still a gap. But we can meet that gap if we work with nature. And that's been my work over the last 20 years. Of course, while we do the work with the earth of seeding freedom for the earth, all her beings, the planet as a whole, the polluters are all ready to capture the climate crisis as the new market. So first, Monsanto came out with a phrase called climate smart agriculture and tried to lock all the countries into this. But all it was about using Roundup and glyphosate with a lie that soils will lose carbon. Now, how can you add more carbon to the soil if you're killing the living carbon, which are the plants? You're disrupting the system and adding toxics on top of it. And in Europe now, and in US, and in India, the debate around Roundup and glyphosate is probably the most intense debate about a chemical input that we've had in all of history of industrial agriculture. 2 years ago, Monsanto bought up the world's biggest climate data corporation. Bought up the world's biggest soil data corporation. It is now talking about artificial intelligence and digital farming. Just today, I received, because I receive all kinds of junk. Probably they have mailing lists and they don't even know whom they're mailing it to. Somewhere I must be showing up in an agriculture list. And this is what I received today. How can artificial intelligence help feed the world? Sick crops? These Indian subsistence farmers know just what to do. Pull out their smartphone and take their picture. The farmers then upload the image with GPS to a cloud, GPS locations to a cloud-based artificial intelligence app named Plantix. Now, I know my farmers. I work with them. In Navdaria, we've trained 1 million to do organic farming. Our farmers have bred 200,000 varieties of rice, including the basmati of my valley. 1,500 kinds of wheats, including the wheat that Monsanto patented and pirated, and we had to fight them, as was the basmati patented and pirated, and we had to fight that. Mangoes, come to our farm. We have a biodiversity farm in Dehradun, in Doon Valley, 9 varieties of mangoes. And they're not the kind of mangoes that get served to you on flights. You know, I order only fruit. Now, it used to be a non-hazardous option earlier, but it's become a hazard because throughout the year you get the same fruit. And now there's no juice, no taste, no uniqueness. The mango should just come in the summertime for us, June, July. This funny yellow, you know, the mango is a nice, deep, orangey flesh. It really has no taste. And it's so hard, you can't, you know, normally I take a fork and just take a slice. You can't use a fork, you've got to have a knife too. I mean, so literally with your plate too, you're having to fight a war every minute. Because when you do breeding for long distance and you do breeding for industrial processing, you've got to have hardness as a virtue, not juiciness, not taste, not flavor, not quality. We have 1,500 bananas evolved in our country. Even now when you go to Kerala, you'll see little cigarette shops with 20 kinds of bananas. And, you know, because I advise my government, I'm on a board of the organic standards. I'm sitting with the chairman one day and he said to me, he'd had a visit. I said, from whom? Del Monte. Saying that our bananas were wrong. Why were they wrong? We are the biggest banana producer and consumer of the world. Biggest. Our bananas were wrong because they were too diverse and they were meant for local consumption. You know? The peel is very thin. And I had to tell my government, please do not go the way of the banana republics. And here are the Monsantos saying sick crops. First of all, with the kind of chemicals they use, there's a new sickness by the day, and they can't keep up with it. When they spray glyphosate, the soil is losing its beneficial organisms. And then invasive toxic fungi are taking over, which are making plants sick. Secondly, most of the life in the soil, you can't look at it from a satellite. The lovely mycorrhizal fungi that move nutrients one to the other, that bind the soil and give it the water-holding capacity. So basically, it's perpetuating a monoculture chemical system, now trapping farmers in yet another commodity, big data. They're calling big data the oil of the future. But data is still data, no matter how big it gets. You know, increasing the amount of data doesn't change it into knowledge. And it definitely doesn't allow you to derive wisdom from it. That comes from partnership. That comes from living with, being with. And our farmers know every corner of their land and the soil. We do surveys with them. Which part of the soil needs irrigation, which part doesn't? Which part is good for pulses and which part is good for wheat and which part is good for rice? They know it. So with this new commodification, of knowledge itself and the outsourcing of the mind with artificial intelligence. You know, the word itself is wrong, because intelligence is derived from the word intellegere, the ability to choose and decide. When you've outsourced your brain through the GPS to ask a company who's ruined your agriculture and destroyed the planet what's the right way to farm, you're ending intelligence. Intelligence is lived. It's in living systems. And the tiniest organisms in the soil, in our gut, they're now calling the gut the second brain, because now they're realizing that most neurological activity takes place in the gut. Biopiracy is another part. Now, when you evolve a seed, you co-evolve it with what nature has given you. So it was one grass that nature gave, that Indian peasants turned into the thousands of rice varieties. It was one teosinte that the Mexicans evolved in the thousands of corn varieties. And of course, it's the intelligence of nature and the intelligence of people working together that then gives us the diversity that we have. Seeds are never engineered. They cannot be. They're complex, self-organizing. And the idea of genetically engineered seed is scientifically so wrong. It's there before us. The BT cotton has failed. 300,000 Indian farmers have committed suicide. Just before leaving, I was writing a big 50-page input to our competition commission to tell them to not allow the merger of Bayer and Monsanto, which is what they're seeking, for 3 reasons. First, Monsanto's got a very bad name, and they want everyone to forget. Secondly, the more powerful they are, the more they can undo regulation. The more they can subvert science, the more they can subvert democracy. So when we talk about the end of the world, the system that's given us climate change is also the system that is destroying the basic freedoms of life and our freedoms that allow us to evolve in freedom with others' freedom. There are, of course, new ways for piracy. Climate-resistant seeds are one. Now, we've been saving seeds for 30 years in Navdanya, and we were saving seeds no matter what. Then the super cyclone hit, and we had salt-tolerant seeds to distribute to farmers. When the tsunami came in 2004, the Orissa farmers could give 2 truckloads of salt-tolerant seeds to the farmers of Tamil Nadu. Salt tolerance is something our farmers have evolved. Flood tolerance, they've evolved. Drought tolerance, they've evolved. Monsanto now says, climate change, now what? You have to turn to us for seed. But not only are they just literally stealing seeds from seed banks, they're now doing genomic mapping, digital mapping of seed. They don't know what's in the seed. They don't know which part does what. All they know is the passport data says this is a drought-tolerant seed. And then they say we play a lottery ticket. We read the genome and make a bet. And they've taken 1,500 biopiracy patents on climate-resilient seeds. How do we seed freedom in this context of every aspect being engineered for the end of freedom? The very idea of chemicals in farming is taking away the freedom of life on earth. The very idea of forcing farmers to not save seeds, imposing the idea of patenting seed, is taking away the freedom of farmers, which is what I have dedicated my life to. And I feel so happy that, in the cases we are fighting in India today, it's because we worked to put in a little clause here, a little clause there in the laws 20 years ago Today, we can stop Monsanto from taking over the entire seed supply. But the idea that surveillance drones are going to watch farming, a Monsanto representative has said, there are only two institutions that need surveillance. The first is CIA, and the second is Monsanto. Now, for me, agriculture is about love for the earth. Agriculture is about the love for our ancestors who gave us what we have, the love for the future, the children who have to come after us. Last year, Stephen Hawking, because of the climate issues and the evidence, said we have just a century on this planet, and then we'll be extinct. And then he said, and therefore we must escape to other planets. Of course, that's a very patriarchal way of thinking. And, create a mess and go somewhere else. Let someone else clean it up. I mean, in the climate debate, I think we need a book on this, feminism and climate change. Because have you noticed how they name every cyclone with a woman's name? Katrina, it goes on and on. They should just be called Exxon, Standard Oil, the basic fossil fuel industry. And if you run out of names, just put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like you had kings, no? King Ferdinand the this and King Ferdinand the that. There is no inevitability of extinction. Extinction is inevitable if we keep going down the way that is destroying the planet, if we're going down the way that is leading to increase in greenhouse gas emissions, if we keep going down the way that's destroying our soils, our water, our biodiversity. But we have another way. We have another way where we can rejuvenate biodiversity. We've saved, I don't know, about 10, 20,000 varieties in community seed banks, and they constantly rescue communities from climate change, but they are more tasty foods. They have more nutrition. Overall, with biodiverse, fossil fuel-free, chemical-free farming, we are producing more nutrition per acre, enough to feed 2 Indias or 2 times the world planet. Our rural communities are earning 10 times more, because this system is not just extracting from the earth, it's extractive incomes from farmers, which is why villages are emptying out. The most important thing that's produced is the food that nourishes us. The most important producers can't make a living because the system is so distorted. And definitely, escape is neither a possibility nor is it desirable. It's not a possibility because this planet is the only one with life. Now, there's Elon Musk, who in 2002 started something called SpaceX. 2002, as recently as that. In a planet, billions of years it has evolved. We've been around 20,000, and he says, his mission is to enable humans to become a space-bearing civilization. Now, it's not that we didn't send spaceships out earlier, but he wants to inhabit Mars. And he said, but the tragedy is, most people won't be able to inhabit Mars. First of all, the ticket is $1 billion. Then he goes on to say, and so far, he's having a problem thinking of the food, but he knows the technology to set up Pizza Hut on Mars. He can ship pizzas. I really believe that we are living through a rule of illusions. It's like little boys have been unleashed on the world. Play with your toys. It doesn't matter what they do. And if things go very wrong, then just get another toy. Beyond extinction and beyond escape is the real solution. Seeding of freedom by embracing our species being, embracing our humanity, embracing our Earth citizenship. Now, embracing our Earth citizenship means embracing the limits that it gives to us, the planetary boundaries, including the boundaries that we must respect to avoid climate change, the planetary boundaries of the hydrological system, the fact that we share this earth and the universe with all beings. We have a beautiful ancient Upanishad which says the universe is for all beings. Take your share and enjoy it. Avoid greed. Do not take others' share, because then you are a thief. So taking more than your ecological share, you are a thief. And Gandhi distilled this into a very beautiful, simple phrase. He was a master in taking wisdom and putting it in 2 sentences. And he said, the earth provides enough for everyone's needs, but not for a few people's greed. And the greed of the fossil fuel system, the greed linked to externalizing problems and letting others bear the problem, is what has given us both the injustice of climate change, the phenomena of climate change. But embracing the earth, embracing her potential and ours with the earth, all our data is showing that we can, in 10 years, reverse climate change. 10 years. Put enough organic matter in the soil simply by taking care of the earth. In Dehradun, in our valley and on our farm, 20 years data, in the chemical farms, the organic matter has gone down 14%. On our farms, it's gone up 99%. And one would think by spraying urea, you're increasing nitrogen. Nitrogen has gone down 22% in the chemical farms. It's gone up 100% in the organic farms. And the zinc, and the magnesium, and the iron. Because we don't do this work. The millions and billions of species in the soil do the work with us. All we have to do is say, thank you, here's your share. Here's the law of return. I will give back. Thank you.
Thank you, Vandana Shiva. Bé, ara tenim uns 25-30 minuts per les seves preguntes, les seves intervencions. Jo els demanaria que fossin breus i concises, així podem donar veu a més persones. I ara els passaran, hi haurà un micro per aquí, allà n'hi ha un i aquí n'hi ha un altre, perfecte. Aquell senyor de la darrera fila, agruparem 3 o 4 preguntes i així ho farem per blocs. Aquí, allà darrere, després hi havia una persona aquí al mig i una altra allà. Davant.
Thank you. You mentioned that the next product that the companies are selling is this big data. And that's to push, of course, their agenda. And I'm wondering if you see this big data also useful in the reverse, so to promote the more organic agriculture, to promote the more diverse agriculture.
Thank you. A la darrera fila hi havia, sí, sisplau. Allà darrere seu. Gràcies.
Thank you very much. It was a very powerful speech and something that resonated within me very much so. So I've got 2 pointers, 2 comments, something that is very powerful in my own life as well and something that you touched on. The cycles, I've got a demon and an angel on each shoulder, and the reason why I have that is that because I feel that the universe has these cycles as well, and you talk about these cycles in a way that, yes, we have been greedy and we haven't known what this overconsumption will do to us, but I also believe that with this destruction, that there's also life again, like there is no life without death, light without dark, happiness without sadness. And I believe that, we've reached a point where we are now paying for our mistakes, but we didn't know those beforehand. Without failure, like we don't, if you don't push yourself and you don't fail in life, then you don't become a better person. And, again, this coincides with this whole powerful insecticide and pesticide and, organic movement, which I myself and my girlfriend as well are, we consume organic produce. Yes, okay, for the insecticide, but also knowing that we're putting nutritionally whole food in our systems, not devoid of nutrition. And again, we've got our own company, and it's a kombucha company, a probiotic tea, and I firmly believe that there's the bacteria in the gut war, how pesticides and insecticides have depleted our diverse gut cultures, and which has allowed for bad bacteria to exponentially grow, and what's happened with this is that this has also created a plethora of bad, infectious diseases.
It's clear. Thank you. Sí, gracias.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the speech. I was really amazed. My question is, as a normal citizens inside the system, as I think we all are, what would be your suggestion about the first step to do tomorrow morning or in the next future? Thank you.
Thank you.
Even though big data is being called the oil, just like at the beginning of the age of oil, it was an important question to ask. Do we need to shift everything we do to a fossil fuel civilization? Should we shift from manuring with organic matter to synthetic fertilizers? Should we shift from natural fibers to synthetic fibers made on fossil fuels? In a similar way, on the issue of big data, it's extremely important to ask, A, what is the tool for? Because technologies, I always feel when poor old Columbus was sent off, he was actually coming to India, which is why all the First Nations of America are called Indians. He really thought he'd landed in India. He was coming for the spices and textiles. And Columbus was sent with a civilizing mission, remember the papal bull? And I think all that's changed is the civilizing mission is now not about European Christians, but it's about money and technology as new religions. Now, when technology and money, which are supposed to be tools and means for other ends, become ends and religions, then they change the way they function in society. So a tool I will check. I will find out if a pencil suits me better or a pen or an ink pen. But as is happening right now, I feel in a way India's being recolonized because we are the experimental place for all the unnecessary thing being imposed as a new civilizing mission. Last year, we had a war on cash, as if cash was suddenly dangerous. All the money of the people was taken away. All the money. I just left last night, getting a call from my office, our organic shop has been shut down. But every day there's something new. Every day. On any grounds? Are there grounds? No, not at all. But it's like alternatives mustn't be allowed. And when you put technology and the level of religion, and you declare big data as the new religion, then all the deep knowledge people have, all the deep knowledge our grandmothers have, all the deep knowledge the farmers have, is treated as nothing. How is the big data collected? Basically, Monsanto is teaming up with the farm machine companies to put spyware into the tractor. They collect the data, send it to St. Louis, who then sends it back as a commodity and sells it to you. Am I saying we shouldn't use computers? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying use it as a tool for the purposes that are useful for you, remembering your higher ends, but don't let them become the means for your control and your domination, and you're ending your own capacity to think, to know, to make your choices. On the issue of cycles, well, you know, the word ecological cycle is a very ecological word. I mean, how does carbon move through various systems? How does water move through various systems? What you were addressing was really the issue of balance and harmony. And yes, that's there. You know, I mean, we have this beautiful image in India of Ardhanarishwar, half man, half woman, that every one of us has the womanly potential. And every one of us has a potential to be a warrior. And part of what patriarchy did with this mechanistic mindset is make it look like men could only be men if they were violent, and women could only be women if they were passive and subservient and brainless. So this artificial generation has taken the balance and harmony away, and with it the potential for creativity away. But I do believe that humans have a capacity to anticipate. We don't have to go through a cycle of destruction to know the potential of destruction if we do something simple I do daily, which is a systems analysis. Look at whatever is happening, not as a fragment, not as big data, but in the system in which it's embedded. What does it do? What does it do to nature? What does it do to society? What does it do to our freedoms and our democracy? On the final issue of normal citizen inside the system, first of all, I think all of us are outside the system. Why do I say we are outside the system? Because 1% runs the system. Let me just share with you, you're not part of that. You know, that's the system today. The 2010, there were 388 billionaires controlling half the wealth of the world. 2011, it was 177, 2012, 150, 2013, 92, 2014, 80, 2015, 62, 2016, 8, 2017, 5. 2018, how many? And it's not that they are men, you know. The billionaires are a system. And they're a system of exclusion of the 99%. And they're a system of including our resources, our wealth, our knowledge into their wealth. Because we are entering a new phase, which is totally a rent-collecting economy. That's what Monsanto tried to do with the seed. Take a patent, collect the rent, they do nothing. They don't breed seed, they don't grow food, they do nothing, they collect rents. Microsoft, does it do anything? No, it stole software from others, took the patent, collects rents. They were there, but Gates was there to advise our government to force the war on cash. Again, that poor woman who sells vegetables and has saved 5,000 rupees. It was illegal overnight. So I do feel that as an ordinary citizen, we have to realize that we are outside because we are not part of the value system, we are not part of the appropriation and extraction system, we are part of the earth system. That's a system of which we are a part. And being part of that, what's it you can do tomorrow? Food. Because food is where we can change the system. And we've been made to think convenience means just go to the supermarket. But just remember now onwards, when you go to the supermarket, you're not buying food. You're buying something that pretends to be food. And then it has huge consequences for your health and your body, but it has huge consequences for the communities of which you would like to be in solidarity, the growers. So just by changing the way you eat, and the choices are not available on a supermarket. You have to work for them. That's why when I say seeding freedom, I didn't say buying freedom, did I? Seeding freedom. You've got to seed it. You've got to get together. You've got to create the alternatives. It takes effort. Everything good takes effort. Every one of you in this room is because your mothers took effort 9 months to carry you.
Sí, més preguntes. 1, 2 i aquí davant 3. Molt bé.
Hello, good evening. It's a great honor to be in your presence, Vandana. And one thing that got my mind was that you said that you helped the Tamil Nadu group. And I was thinking that in that region there is a guru called Sadhguru. I don't know if you know him. That has a lot of influence over the people and over the region. I mean, he has an action of planting trees. But I heard him recently in a talk with another interlocutor talking about genetically modified organisms. And his position was definitely not one of the people that would protect the natural systems, but more of like we need technology to survive or to subsist. Do you know anything about this? Do you have any contacts with the spiritual leaders in India, and what's their position in this? And over the world, I think, because like spirituality, religion is, if not important for everyone, it's for the majority. I think it's a deep-rooted issue. Thank you.
Aquí al mig hi havia una... Sí. I per aquí, no?
Well, I'm sorry, but I have 3 questions. So let's...
Short.
Well,
Just a question.
okay. Well, here in Europe, I guess in the whole world, we have a problem with subventions towards not sustainability, what would not be sustainable, like over fisheries or over what caused over fisheries or over pastries. Did you find yourself in the situation in India to fight subventions that the government gave?
Okay, first question. Second.
What plans do you recommend for devastated soils? And finally, well, especially in the Mediterranean, because it's what concerns me. And finally, are you afraid of big companies and multinationals?
Ok. Aquí, sí, anava primer aquesta noia amb el jersei de ratlles. Aquí. No, exacte.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. I always believe that by consuming or not consuming, we could really have an enormous impact on the whole economy. But it doesn't occur. No? People still keep consuming, and I often think about boycott. And I know some movements with boycott, but it doesn't really occur so much now. So I wonder if you believe that boycotting products and not consuming, but in a massive amount, products could be a possible action. And do you have suggestions of on how we could actually manage or lead such movements. Because personally, I really would like to lead this kind of movement, but I don't have like the tools in my mind, no?
You know, India is not just a land of gurus, it's also the land where every investor is descending. And my thesis about the new colonization of India, you know, why is India such a favorite? For the simple reason that while in the last round we had a lot of, you know, wealth that could be stolen physically, 25% of the world's economy was India till colonization. And at the end of colonization, we were reduced to 2%. And then we were poor. And then we had to be developed, and we had to get aid and everything else. But now what India has, which is being pirated, is a lot of biodiversity. We are a biodiversity civilization. That's why the neem, the basmati, everything. But I think India has this amazing real wealth of doing very well with very little. You know? And being self-organized. Gandhi's word for it was Swaraj, self-organized. And local economy, the fact that he pulled out the spinning wheel and said to the British, and this is partly related to the question that you were raising on consumerism and boycott. You know, by the end of it, we'd been destroyed as a textile country, and everything was made in England. The slaves were taken from Africa. The indigo was taken from India. The cotton was taken from America and wherever else it could grow. And Gandhi said, we will not grow indigo anymore. But I remember my mother, when I was very young, 6 years old, you know, fossil fuel fiber was just coming, and she said, what do you want for your birthday? Everyone was wearing nylon. I said, nylon frock. She said, I'll get it for you. But remember, you wear the nylon frock, a man got his next Mercedes car. You wear a khadi, the hand-spun, hand-woven, a woman fed her children that night. You make your choice. I've been making that choice ever since. It's so important to know where things begin and where things go. I think Sadhguru is not very, he's lived in America all his life. And he loves racing cars and everything. And I think if you're spiritual, you really don't, you know, that world doesn't charm you anymore because you evolved with a different plane of consciousness. So I think this whole, first of all, the use of the word technology independent of qualifiers is a wrong use of English. There's a technology of sound amplification. I don't say I'm holding technology. No, I'm holding a mic, which does a certain job. Every technology is a tool to do something. And this elevation of technology to religion is what a lot of people are seduced by, including gurus. Because it is the civilizing mission. You feel somehow you're backward and primitive. And I say it's the time for barbarians to rise. Barbarians are those who live in peace with the earth, who don't need to colonize other people, who don't need to overconsume, for whom simplicity leads to the good life. If that is being barbaric, we'd all better be barbaric. Because barbarianism, in the original term, didn't mean they were violent. They were just not Christian. That was the problem. You know, they had other faiths. I do suggest for those of you who care, I think Pope Francis's Laudato Si, which was written just before the Paris summit, is a very important document. And I think he's, in a way, made up for all the damages of the papal bull of 1493. He's corrected all the mistakes of conquest of nature, conquest of people. The issue of subsidies is the way industrial farming has spread and continues. Because remove the subsidies, it's a system that cannot work. $400 billion is what is spent globally on subsidies. Half of the European budget. even though they were supposed to give it up after the Hong Kong WTO ministerial. Half of your public money is not going to run centers like this. It's going to spread poisons in agriculture. So I really feel the subsidy question and the externality question. Externality is that which you don't count. You destroy the oceans, you destroy the climate, you don't count it. You make people sick with disease, you don't count it. We've done a calculation, we call the book Wealth Per Acre. In India alone, $3 trillion annually is what is being spent by destruction of nature and destruction of our health and the killing of our farmers. Now, globally, it would be into trillions and trillions, which would be much bigger than the formal economy. The shadow, destructive shadow, is bigger, and only those subsidies keep a bad, non-sustainable, unworkable system alive. I think plants that are good for the soil, the plants know, the soil know, the local people know. I think the one thing we have to stop doing is the one miracle plant that will work everywhere else. No. The Mediterranean has its own plants. Resilience is definitely a criteria, but increasing the biomass, increasing the living organic matter to give back to the soil. Because there are two things we need to do in climate change. We have to adapt with the harm that's coming, and we have to build up the future resilience through the living organic matter. That's why I don't agree with the term that has become fashionable in some climate circles. They talk of decarbonization. I definitely feel we should get rid of fossil carbon. That decarbonization is desirable. But we cannot get rid of living carbon because you and I would be dead. We are carbon, plants are carbon, the planet is carbon. Living carbon, not fossilized. We need more living carbon, and we need to stop using dead carbon. Am I afraid? Why should I be? They tell lies, they're bullies, they spread poisons. We spread love, we spread truth. Why should we be afraid? Just because a poison cartel of 3 wants to continue the damages. And in terms of consumption, I think all of us wear clothes, we eat food. But consumerism as a disease is fitting into the throwaway disposable culture. So my clothes, my saris are 50 years old. They're made with beauty, they're made with love. But when you fit into the consumerist chain, and if this year was orange and you've got purple, sorry, you got to buy new clothes and throw the old away. Same with food. You buy too much because it's been made artificially cheap, and then you have to throw it away. So all of this does mean a boycott of a way of thinking and the way of governing the economy, and a commitment to build other economies aligned with the earth, with our humanity. And it's not going to be easy. But just because it's difficult doesn't mean it's not joyful.
Gràcies per la seva assistència i gràcies a... Thank you very much.